Hi there, and welcome to Mondays with Marlo. You know, from the moment that I started this site, I wanted it to be about the things that we dream about, the things that we believe in are worth fighting for, standing up for ourselves, and really, and often, having to start over. So who could be the more perfect guest to talk to us about all of those things than my good friend, Anita Hill, who's with us today. Anita has a brand new book. What's the name of your book?
Reimagining Equality.
Oh, wonderful. Reimagining equality, that's something we have to do every day, right?
Every day. We have to work at it.
So very much Anita has been an inspiration to me and to so many of you. And from the questions that have come in that are so personal and so compelling, it just shows how many people really look to you for what you've done and accomplished and recreated your life, you know, from something that could have been a hurdle.
Well,
so,
thank you.
Yeah,
and you know, I take that really as an honor as well as a challenge, because so many people do have faith in me, and I hear from them every day.
Do you?
And I wish I could answer everybody. I wish I had a response for everyone. And this gives me a chance to really talk to a lot of people, so I'm so pleased to be here.
Great. Now we're going to get right into the questions because that's the most important thing, is hearing what you have to say. So this question is from Steve. Steve's right there. He says, "Hi Anita, can you offer some advice or a few tips on how to mentally prepare yourself for the challenge of rebuilding your life after it's been set off course?"
The first thing is to realize that you may have to get used to a new normal. And that's odd. That's hard for people because automatically you think, oh, we want to get back to where we were, exactly where we were. Sometimes that's possible, but sometimes it's not. So accept the fact that there may be a new normal, but never accept the fact that you ought to be defeated. My tips are really to start out looking at yourself. What are your personal strengths? What do you have going for you? For me, I knew after the hearings that, you know, I was still the same daughter. I was still the same good teacher. I was still the same good friend and colleague to my colleagues at the university, and I could build on that. I look at it as almost like SOS, you know, look for your strengths, look for your options and opportunities, and also look for your support.
This is from Molly. "Hi Anita, in your book," oh, she's already read your book, how great, "you talk about challenges that you faced after the hearing. What was the hardest challenge you had to work through, and how did you deal with it? What inspirations did you draw from?"
Well, the hardest challenge, I think, was initially accepting that I wasn't going to be able to go back to the life that I had had before. I had a good life, and I wanted it back, and it just didn't come the way I wanted it to. But then I thought, well, what if I could have a better life? What if I could grow from the experience and, you know, do better and make something of it and contribute so that this event didn't happen to other people, or certainly didn't happen in the same way. And I was inspired by a lot of things, but one of the things that I think inspired me most was the thousands of letters that I started to get after the hearing. I mean, they literally poured into my mailbox.
You bet.
From people just like Vicki, and people who were just there to share their stories with me. They didn't all have answers and solutions,
right,
but they were inspiring just because they reached out and touched my life.
Yes, absolutely. This is from Marlene. "Hi, what can we do in our community, society to nurture children born to single mothers? Latchkey kids still exist. Seems like people in power just don't support women or children."
One of the things that I am really quite concerned about is the fact that much of our policy is based on the idea that the nuclear family is going to exist, that you're going to have children raised in a home with both a mom and a dad, and that one of those parents is going to stay home. Typically it's going to be the mom, and that children will not have to come home on their own. That's not happening, whether we're talking about single parent families or two-parent families. Children are coming home and are alone in their homes in the in the afternoons after school. We don't have enough after school
No.
programs.
They cut them.
They cut
They
the
cut those
programs.
programs.
They have cut activities, arts, for example, that students could be involved in after school. We've cut sports that students and children could be involved in the afternoons. And those kinds of services really need to be reinstated.
This is from Tammy. Who was affected most by predatory lending and the banks going to face the consequences? And are the banks going to face the consequences of this?
First of all, let's look at the predatory lending problem. The immediate reaction, the immediate effect was on communities of color and on single women purchasing homes on their own. That's where predatory lending was targeted. That's where subprime loans were targeted. And so that was the immediate effect. But it had a ripple effect. Of course, we know now that it affects not only individuals, but it affects communities. It affects some states even more than others. And so what do we need to do? We need to look at it as a problem that will affect all of us. Whenever any group is targeted for subprime loans or bad financing or unavailability of loans, it has an impact on the entire society.
Yes. This is from Joan. Hi, Anita. I've been working at my job for 2 years and haven't gotten a raise. I always come in on extra days when asked and was just promoted. There's another man that started later than me and now he has a raise. All of my managers are men and I feel that that has something to do with it. How do I speak out? Now that's interesting. She was promoted but no raise.
First, please feel you're entitled to that money. You are entitled to
right.
it. You do your job, you've already shown that.
Yeah.
So if you're having trouble, though, what I say is to get all of that information together, put all your arguments together, practice. Practice what you're going to say when you go to your boss.
That's right. That's great.
Get together with a group of your friends, and they can play sort of devil's
like
advocate. Just rehearse what you're going to
exactly.
say, and go over it in details. Take tips from their friends who might have to give you extra advice. And I would also say, because there seem to be some gender differences here, make sure one of those friends is a man.
Good advice.
Because they may give you better or different kinds of tips than your other female friends would.
That's great. Good for you. This is from Vanessa. What does somebody face among their co-workers and with HR when they come forward with a sexual harassment claim at work?
Well, that varies. What you face when you bring a sexual harassment claim varies. I have heard from people who say, it was a good and empowering experience because their HR people were really dedicated to zero tolerance. I've talked to HR people who really are dedicated to zero tolerance and willing to enforce it. But I've also talked to people who do not meet that kind of reception. But it's still important to come forward if you have a complaint process in your workplace that is available to you. The first thing, though, that should happen is that your HR person should take a statement. They should show you whatever the policy or the procedure is, and they should take your statement down. And they're going to ask you what happened to the extent that you can tell them exactly what happened. They're going to ask you for witnesses, if there are witnesses, other people who may know about this behavior. They're going to ask you for a lot of information, and the more thorough that you can be, the better position you're going to be in, not only with the HR person, but if you end up having to take it further, then you will have created that record. I think what we should do is always go in assuming that you will be well received.
Yes.
Because it doesn't do any good to go in thinking that you're not
and
going
with
to
a chip
be
on your shoulder.
right,
yeah.
and that you're just going to lose confidence.
Right, yes,
you know,
right,
you need to believe that this is your right and that you should be there complaining.
This is from Bodie Mars. My name is Melissa, and I was wondering if Anita had any tips on looking for a house in this market. My husband wants to get a cheaper fixer-upper, but I think we should strike while the iron's hot on something great. What's your advice?
Well, Melissa, I hope you're going to read my book, and I hope you will understand where I'm coming from with this question. And I have bought so many houses because I've moved in different parts of the country. But every time I bought a house, I saw that house as my home. It was not there for necessarily for investment. In fact, the economists are telling us that thinking of your home as an investment that you're going to make money off from is just not a good way to approach home buying now and in the immediate future. I think of the purchase should be a home. So the two of you, you and your husband, should get together and say, what do you need from a home? You need basic security. You need a place that's going to be nurturing to you, something that you can contribute to. And I like to say also that you want a place that's going to put you in a community that you can be a part of, that allows you to grow and that you can feel engaged with.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Think of the purchase as the purchase of a home and not just, 5 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms.
And it's a life you're really buying.
It is a life you're buying.
Life. Absolutely. This is from Mary. What advice do you have for dealing with unexpected upheavals in your life? What did you do in order to get your life back to normal after the trial?
I did something perhaps that was unconventional because out of the upheaval, I decided to make some changes of my own. I decided to move halfway across the country and leave a position of teaching, a tenured position that I had at the University of Oklahoma, move on to Brandeis University, because I believe that intellectually that place would get me to my goals of really starting to address many of the issues of gender inequality and racial inequality that I was hearing about when I got all of these letters in the mail.
So it kind of made you step on the gas to where you wanted to go.
It made me step out, maybe even outside of my comfort zone. Now, I say that, believe me, I marshaled everything. I had a plan for doing that. I just didn't sort of step out and say, I'm going to go out on my own. But I think that was my way of dealing with the upheaval.
This woman calls herself Wonder Woman. Good for you. Hi, Anita. Do you think that there are still race and gender inequalities in our society today? What else can we do to help fight for both race and gender equality?
Yes, the answer is yes. There are race and gender inequalities that continue to exist, and I discuss them in the book. They're a lot more subtle now, I think, overall than they were at one point in our history. But they exist, and I think what we have to understand is that they impact us all. It's not just about those other people over there. Ending those kinds of inequalities in society isn't just for the good of those people. It's for the good of us as an entire society. I think if we take ownership of it, then we take ownership of the solution. And that's how we're going to get it. But one of the things that we can do, that even though we're not personally victimized, I think one of the things that we don't do is to talk about it in our homes, to talk about what we see and how it exists around us.
This is from Mill Grace. Anita, when you think back to the Clarence Thomas hearings, was there anything you would have done differently?
Wow. You look back with hindsight, and of course you think of things that you might have wanted to change. I think what I would have done differently is that I would have become a student or studied sexual harassment more, to understand it better when I testified. Now, to keep in mind, when I testified, it was really about, for me, about the integrity of the court. My testimony was about whether or not Clarence Thomas was the right person to sit in final judgment on issues of race and gender and inequality issues that sexual harassment is a part of. But I think I might have felt less isolated had I understood a little bit more about sexual harassment. As a lawyer, I understood it intellectually, but I didn't really understand fully how awful it is to some people and how it impairs people's ability to work in the workplace.
This is from Terry. How would you change the nomination and selection process for the Supreme Court?
We don't have an appreciation for balance on the court. And we're now in that phase where we've had a lot of conservative appointees, and and everyone who's written about the court, especially Jeffrey Toobin, if you read his work, he says where the court is moving in the direction of the right, and that really is not good for the long-term health of the law.
It's also not representative either.
It's not representative of the law. It's not representative of the population, and I think that we're going to suffer for that in the future.
Hi, Anita. This is from Hello World. What advice or tips do you have for single mothers in being able to survive as a single mother in this economy?
Well, I think my advice for single mothers as well as their children is education. I know in my life education has played the greatest role in helping me to see the world, helping me to achieve economically, helping me to achieve in my profession, and it's given me a great deal of satisfaction personally, the knowledge that I have gained from education, as well as the feeling of achievement that comes from it.
And security. Don't you feel secure when you have information?
Something they can't take from you.
Yes.
Right. What you have in your brain cannot be taken.
Right.
And for children, we really do know that it makes a difference in terms of their long-term future, their ability to be economically sustained, to go out in the world and make a living, to participate. We know people who are better educated are able to participate politically more. And it's, so all of those things I say are important. Emphasize education to your children and adopt it yourself. Adopt that emphasis yourself. To the extent possible, if you can, you haven't, go to school, get your own education, become their role model.
Yeah, that's great. We have a saying at the Ms. Foundation that girls are watching, what are they seeing?
Exactly.
And it's true for boys, girls and boys. This is from Nikki. I have read stories that Mrs. Clarence Thomas called you and harassed you. Is this true? Well, first of all, did she call you?
Mrs. Thomas did make a telephone call to my office. It happened about a year ago. We are now. It was 19 years after the hearing, so it was an odd call. And honestly, it was at a time when I just really I had death in my family. I had just come back from this long trip, and I was just not ready to entertain a conversation with Mrs. Thomas. But first of all, I didn't even know who the call was from. I thought it was a crank call. And so I had the campus police look at it and investigate it. And they turned it over to the FBI. Ultimately, we found it was Mrs. Thomas, and she even admits that it was not a good idea for her to call me.
Why such a delayed reaction?
Well, I think there was sort of, I don't know why she chose that moment. And there was a veiled intimidation, maybe not even veiled intimidation in the call, demanding an apology to her or her husband or to someone. But it was, that then triggered something in me, because I got so much reaction from individuals sending me emails, responding to it. What it said was that event still resonated. That event resonated, and she resurrected that when she made the call.
Right.
And so what I thought of that is that if this is still on people's minds, if it's still meaningful as the messages that I was getting were suggesting, let's do something about it. Let's talk about what it meant 20 years ago and what it means now.
Right.
And that's when I started talking to people about doing events and programs for the 20th anniversary, one of which is going to be in New York City at Hunter College, another at Georgetown Law School in Washington, D.C.
That's great.
All of those things to help us sort out what does it mean. I can't answer the question myself, but we're going to have people who were witnesses at the time of the hearing, people who have come up since then. Imagine this, there were people who are now in college, headed to law schools, who weren't even born at the time of the hearing. What does it mean to them? What does it mean to all of us? And how can we move forward? And that's what's going to be, we're going to be showcasing at Hunter College as well as at Georgetown Law School.
That's great, Anita. That's just great. This is from Ron Shook. Would you apply a long-term limit and or maximum age to the justices so that they can't muck up America for decades on end because of their luck of the draw?
Well, I would like to make sure that the justice, as he says, doesn't muck up America. But as you know, as any attorney knows, and Ron sounds like he may be someone who studies the law at least, one decision, if you look at Plessy versus Ferguson, that really it lasted the creation of separate but equal. That mucked up America for decades. So one decision, so making people one term or limiting terms wouldn't necessarily prevent that from happening. So I think that there are things that we need to be able to do, but I'm not sure that a maximum age is, or even term limits would in fact yield the result that he is suggesting.
Okay, here, let's see. This person's name is Smirk Smirk. Anita, the state of the economy has been really rough on my family. My husband has lost his job, and although I still work, it's not enough. What advice do you have on how to make the best of these tough economic times?
That is $1 million question,
yes, it
isn't it? My best advice for that is there are two different ways to approach it, whether we're talking about economically or whether we're talking about spiritually. I think we first have to understand that these times are not going to last forever if we make some good decisions politically. And we need to be willing to make those very bold decisions about what is best for our country. Individuals who are out of work. I have family members who are out of work who are looking for jobs. We need to be able to engage our politicians to see these people. I think one of the things that's so powerful for me is just hearing people's stories. And then we need to have policies that are based on real life experience, not just some theories that may or may not work, but what is going to be best for those people who've lost their jobs, who are looking for jobs, families, children. We have to create safety nets for those families in economic times that are not good. And we can't simply rely on the private sector for that. The role of government has to be to help in the times of need. The economy is bad worldwide, but we have to make our own choices about what's good for American people. And I think if your husband now has lost his job, if he has the time now, is the time for him to get politically active. Get engaged. Read what's going on and make sure that he is counted when it comes time for politicians to make decisions. It's going to be very hard on the family, though, and that's what I'm sensing in this question, is that even though she has a job, it's still difficult because of the pressures that are on her and even her children now. There may be some counseling and resources. I'm a really strong believer in counseling, any kind of available counseling for individuals. I wish I had a magic answer and 10 points to get beyond this, but unfortunately I don't.
No one does. But what I think one of the things we is just to know that I love the idea of the fact that her husband lost his job, which is tragic, God knows, but to then find a way to help the change and get politically involved. Because a lot of times when people lose their jobs, and I'm getting a lot of letters about this, is that they just become depressed and they drink beer and watch television, and they just can't get out of the loss. They're mourning their working life, as rather than saying, okay, I'll still look for a job, but with this time I'm going to do something active.
Right, and you love your work. You do great work, and I love my work. It's a part of who we are. So yes, psychologically and spiritually, it is very difficult when people cannot find work. But the solutions are not necessarily individual solutions. They're solutions that the country has to engage in, and we need to really bring us together to do that.
This is from Anna. Hi, Anita. I'm just starting law school. Do you have any advice for women wanting to go into the law profession?
Anna, other than the economy, this is a great time to be a woman lawyer.
Really?
When because we've just seen an enormous increase in the number of women lawyers. When I won't even say when I started law school, it's a long time ago. I started law school, and women were in the minority. But it was a decade of really quite an increase of the number of women. And women, we got to that tipping point where we started to change the culture in law schools. And that was important. And now we're reaching that point where we're starting to change the culture in legal practice. And the kinds of issues we address, the way we practice law, many women are charting a different course for doing that, and addressing issues that were not being addressed before. And so that's why I say it's a great time to be a woman lawyer.
Yeah. This is from Dallison. Hi, Anita. One of my bosses keeps making inappropriate sexual jokes at work. It's been getting worse and worse, and it makes me feel uncomfortable since some of the jokes are now directed at me. Is this sexual harassment? Should I complain, and where do I complain? I'm also worried that if I do voice my complaint, there will be a backlash at work. Help. What do I do?
Well, I think your fears may be well-founded, but I don't know. I think, but you have to object. You have to object.
Well, I think the first question is this sexual harassment?
Well,
so sexual jokes about you, is that sexual harassment?
That definitely falls within the realm of sexual harassment.
Okay.
But what I would say, too, is that even if it is not legally or technically sexual harassment, a lot of times what we find with workplace problems is that things may not meet the legal definition. But it's still something that is keeping us from performing in the workplace the way we know we can and should be. And so what you need really is a human resource officer who says, even if this is not the legal definition, and I don't know without knowing more about her particular workplace situation and what's going on, even if it's not, it's something that we want to stop.
Yes.
Because this is impacting you, it's impacting your ability to perform, and it's probably impacting a lot of other people who are uncomfortable with it as well. And so I want to help us understand what sexual harassment is, but I keep in mind that at the core of it is our ability to perform our jobs.
Right.
And that's, to me, important, even if it doesn't meet a legal definition of harassment. It should be something that is stopped.
Yes, if you're uncomfortable and you can't work and you're afraid to even be with someone. Now this one is from Blanche. She says, I love you, Marlo and Anita. We love you too. We're glad you're here. I'm 54 and my kids are finally all in college. I've always wanted to make my own jewelry, and I have pipe dreams of starting my own company making handmade things. One problem, I'm a dental hygienist. Where do I start?
If you do want to start your own business, the Small Business Administration has offered a lot of workshops. They've even had funding in the past for women who are starting businesses, and look to those kinds of resources, because there are groups out there who are there to encourage women to start business, give them basic information about financing, give them basic information about balance sheets, because if you're going to start a business, you're going to be in it to be in a business as well as to be creative. But I always encourage people to follow their creative impulse
and their passion.
or their passion.
Yeah. It's about dreaming. It's about having the courage to dream and then making it come true.
And not so much, maybe this isn't the best advice for some people, but not so much be worried about a title as a position that gets you what you need and allows you to grow and be the best that you can be.
That's great. Now, you know, one of the things that our community loves are tips. Tips are something you can take away and think about them and nosh on them and check off, you know, if you did that or you didn't. So what I'd love for you to give all of us women tips on how to gear yourself up to speak up when something is really bothering you.
So the first tip is to share it. Share whatever burden this is with someone else, because in that way, I think mostly what happens is that they reinforce what you've already come to yourself. So that's your first thing. And then the second thing is, and now this may sound counterintuitive or actually contradictory, to find some space for yourself. And that quiet space, whether it's in your bedroom, some people don't have that quiet space, maybe it's in the bathroom, in the shower, where you're visualizing the experience that you're about to go through. And then finally, I would say that go to the person, go to the event, and then walk away from it, at least for a while. Walk away from it. Don't let it become you. This, whatever it is only one part of your life.
Oh, that's great.
It is not your entire being. Walk away from it, return to who you are, know that you did the right thing, and then build on that.
Oh, that is such good advice.
Thank you.
Anita, thank you for that.
Oh,
really,
thank
that's
you.
meant a lot to me. Really. I'm so thrilled to have been able to bring Anita today. I'm so excited. I wanted her so badly to come and talk to us, and I'm very excited about her book, which I've already started to read, called Reimagining Equality. So everybody should go out and buy it, because it's all about stories of gender, race, and finding home.
And I will be talking about the book when I'm here in New York and at Hunter College on the 15th, and in Washington, D.C., and in a number of places.
And when do you go to Washington, D.C.?
October 6th.
Oh, good.
On October 6th.
Well, we'll put that up on our Facebook so people come
I
see
will
you.
be there, and I will be here as well. So I'm
Good.
excited about
Good.
the book, and I'm really, really thrilled to be here to talk to you. This has been great.
Been terrific.
And it's been great to talk to your viewers, too.
It's been
excellent.
fun. Thanks so much for coming and talking with us today, and I'll see you next week.